Descartes' First Meditation, the method of doubt. When he begins the first meditation, he notes that many of the beliefs that he accepted as true turned out to be false. And because of this, anything built on those beliefs would be doubtful. And so he sets for himself two main goals. The first is to get rid of all the opinions he had previously accepted. Secondly, his positive project is to build anew from the foundation that he's going to establish to build a firm and permanent structure in the sciences. So basically clearing away all the rubble and then putting down a foundation upon which to build the sciences. As far as his methodology goes, it has two main parts. First, he's not going to try to show that everything he believes is false, because that would be, as we'll see in a bit, quite an undertaking. Now, his methodology is going to be very, very strict. Anything that is not entirely certain will be rejected as if they were manifestly false. Now, this may seem extreme, even crazy, but it's important to note that Descartes here is not taking this as a method of how to go about, practical matters in life. So when he was going to make lunch or something, he wouldn't say, "Oh, I cannot be certain that the bread is here and the meat is here and the cheese and lettuce is here, so I cannot believe in the sandwich." So it's not a practical thing in terms of going through everyday life. Rather, it's part of his methodology, because what he wants to do is essentially break anything that is breakable in terms of trying to show that it's false to get to certainty. To use an analogy, imagine for some reason you wanted a unbreakable metal. And of course the way to find it would be to make metals and keep breaking them. And if you find one that cannot be broken, well, then you probably have your unbreakable metal. Now, continuing his methodology, he believes that if he can doubt the foundation of a belief, then he can essentially get rid of all the beliefs based on that foundation. And he's doing this for a very practical reason. If he had to undertake an examination of each individual belief, like take a belief, check it, then take another belief and check it, he would be doing this forever. One obvious, reason would be, of course, that he would have beliefs about his beliefs, and then beliefs about the beliefs about the beliefs, on to infinity. And so what he's going to do is go after the foundation of all these beliefs, and if that foundation is destroyed, all the rest fall. To use an analogy, he's doing essentially sort of destruction that people do today when they use a controlled demolition of a building. You don't go and take the building and take it apart brick by brick, because that would take such a long time. What's done is they find the key supports, put in some explosives, and boom, the building is down. And so he's kind of doing a controlled demolition of his ideas. Now, he considers the foundation of all his flawed beliefs to be the senses. So he's going after the senses. And again, his end game is not to be skeptical. His end game is to find everything that can be doubted, get rid of all that, find what cannot be doubted, and build the science from that. So turning to doubting the senses, he asserts that what he used to accept as true and certain came to the senses. So then why is he rejecting them now? Well, his rejection is based on this. The senses, he notes, have deceived him at times. There are various optical illusions and auditory hallucinations, etc., that have deceived him. And he believes, by analogy, that it's wiser to not entirely trust anything which has deceived us. And so, just as one would not trust a person that's deceived you, you would not trust the senses that has deceived you. Now again, he's doing this as a very strict method. He's not saying, okay, never believe in the senses for practical purposes. His objective is to say, can I find something that cannot be doubted at all? And the senses have proven unreliable. So he decides, since they fail him sometimes, he shouldn't completely trust them. And that's enough to give him the doubt he needs to reject the senses. But then he pauses. And Descartes has multiple skeptical pauses where he's heading into, doubt, but then sort of stops, reconsiders, and it seems like maybe he's found his bedrock. But each time he finds that the rock breaks, and beneath it is just empty void. So he's in the free fall again. So what is his first pause? Well, his first pause is this. He says, yes, sure, sometimes the senses deceive us about things that are far away or barely perceptible, optical illusions, etc., etc. But surely there are general things that cannot reasonably be doubted. Like in his case, he's there seated by the fire, or in my case that I'm here talking into the microphone, recording this class. Surely this has got to be, real. To deny this would be madness. But just when it seems like it would be madness, he embraces the madness. And he notes that in dreams, things less probable than those claimed by the insane occur. And he notes something we've all probably experienced, namely dreaming that you're awake and then realizing that you're asleep, dreaming you're awake. And so he is in free fall now saying, this all could just be a dream. But then he pauses again. And he says, well, maybe there is a way to tell the difference between dreaming and being awake. Because what occurs in sleep doesn't appear as clear or distinct as what he's experiencing now. So he pauses. So once again, he thinks maybe he's on a foundation and maybe he's found it. And then, of course, the floor shatters and he's falling again. Why? Well, he notes that in sleep, he's been deceived by illusions. And contrary to what he just said, he claims there are no certain indications to clearly and distinctly distinguish being awake from dreaming. So essentially what he's saying here is, going back to the ancient skeptics, that he has no standard by which to tell whether he is awake or not. So given his method, again, his method essentially is, if there's even the slightest possibility of doubt, he rejects it. And so he assumes, for the sake of discussion, that he is asleep, and everything he seems to be experiencing is but a false delusion, and that what seems to be his hands and body are not as they appear to be. So he's back into free fall in the void with no foundation. But wait, perhaps the foundation is coming up. So he pauses again, this time with the painter analogy, which is this. He considers that maybe the dreams are like paintings. How so? Well, in the analogy, the dream is like the painting, and in a painting, he considers that whatever's in the painting, of course the painting could be, is obviously not the real thing, but it's going to be based on something real and true. So the general things that make up whatever it is that's in the painting, like eyes, head, hands, body, are not imaginary, but real. And then he pushes it a bit more. What about, mythological creatures like sirens, which, they're, in some cases, they're presented as like mermaids, upper body of human, lower body of fish, or satyrs, which are upper body human, lower body goat. And he notes that even in such mythological cases, they're not entirely new, but they're combined parts. Again, mermaid, human, fish. Satyr is a human goat, and likewise for other mythological creatures. So he says, okay, maybe what I'm experiencing, the combinations are not real, but the parts making them up are real. But then he pushes a little further, and you can see the floor starting to crack, perhaps. If a painting is entirely fictitious in false, he says, at least the colors are real. So, by this analogy, though the general things in a painting, body, eyes, head, hands, may be imaginary, surely the simpler and more universal objects are real and true. Just as, again, continuing with analogy, just as there are real colors in even the most fantastic of images. So at this point, he says certain things fall within the class of things that, perhaps the simple things cannot be doubted. So maybe corporeal nature, extension, figure, quantity, magnitude, number, location, time. Maybe those perhaps can be trusted. But put into complicated things, physics, astronomy, medicine, which consider the composite things, they're very dubious and uncertain. Why? Well, let's take the example of astronomy. The study of the stars and celestial objects. So, given Descartes' dream problem at this point, maybe all the stars and moons are but dreams in his mind. So, astronomy could be studying nothing real, but all the simple bits, like analogous to the colors, like the paintings of the stars and the moons and stuff, the colors would be real, and by analogy, the bits that would make up, the appearance of the stars and the planets and so forth, those bits would be real. Although the whole composite things would be dubious and uncertain. Again, going back to the analogy of the mythological creatures, astronomy could be like a centaur, combining the parts of real things, but itself being a fictional thing, or so he claims. But at this point, he's still kind of paused. There seem to be some simple bits that cannot be doubted. And then he heads to another pause, which is the math pause. So math, geometry, and other things, he thinks maybe those could be trusted, even in like the worst case dream scenario. So he says, okay, I can't accept, astronomy, etc. All those things can be doubted. Maybe you can doubt all the stuff that, corporeal nature, etc., etc. But at this point, he's getting to essentially math and logic. Why does he consider not doubting these? Well, he claims they deal with very simple and very general things. Although when it comes to like geometry, math, and logic, being very simple may not be the best description. But key to this is that the math, geometry, and other such things don't determine whether things exist or not. So they could be taken with some certainty. Why? Well, whether you're awake or asleep, dreaming or walking, 2 and 3 would always be 5. Squares will always have 4 sides. And it seems at this point impossible that truths so clear and apparent could be suspected of any falsity or uncertainty. So at this point, he seems to have hit a potential foundation. He's standing on math. But things, of course, are going to get worse. And next time, we get to meet the demon.